Hello and welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute-a-day podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse, recorded here in the dining room of the Bible Bistro, located in Sharonville, Ohio. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. Please come in and sit down with me. Get yourself something hot or cold to drink. We are at the bottom step. We're in the valley. We're at the blessed man's trouble this week, or rather today. We started yesterday in verse 5, today 6 and 7, tomorrow 8, 9, and 10, but tomorrow we'll get to the end of the valley, the trouble time, and then we'll have the prayer there in verse 10, so we step up out of the valley onto the other side of the chasm, or the chiasm. So, we have trouble. The enemies have spoken against me. That was yesterday in verse 5. May he die a death, may his name perish. Notice the imprecatory nature of this. Imprecatory prayers, you find them in the Psalms, and they are against the wicked man. And usually they're rather strict. They're very stringent. I guess that's a good word for it. May he die a death. May his name perish. Look at 6 and 7. If he comes to see, or to visit me, may wickedness speak to his heart. May he gather wickedness to himself. He goes out and talks. Together they whisper against me, everyone who hates me. Against me they plan evil concerning me. You see the may wickedness speak, may he gather wickedness. He goes out and talks. So it's this imprecatory prayer is very strict and stringent. It's very dark in a way, because he's wishing death upon somebody. This is not a prayer that we would take into our prayer closet, friends, okay? This, you know how many times I say that to you? Take this into your prayer closet. Okay, here's a time I'm going to say to you, you do not take this into your prayer closet. You leave this with David. Let David say these words. But for you pray for grace, mercy, peace, and truth. Don't pray for someone to die a death and his name perish. That's going to happen, but you don't need to be praying it, okay? So do not take this into your prayer closet. Verse 6 says, if he comes to see me, may wickedness speak to his heart. May he gather wickedness to himself. So wickedness just is repeated over and over again, and then we have it again there in verse 8. And we'll get to that tomorrow. So he comes to visit because something's happened. Apparently, the sickness that the psalmist has mentioned there in verse 3 and the sickness that he has in verse 4, heal my spirit, it's more than just spiritual or soulish. This is apparently it's affected his body. And when he comes to see me, may wickedness speak to his heart. So it's not just that he's come to visit for a good purpose, but the psalmist knows that he's come to visit for a bad purpose. He goes out and he talks. He gathers the people against the psalmist. Notice there in verse 7, they whisper against me, everyone who hates me. So all the they there in verse 7 are the people who hate him. And apparently now that he's in trouble, physically, spiritually, soulishly, he's vulnerable, and the enemies have risen up. Perhaps this is, for David, this is the time of Absalom. Perhaps this is sometime during the reign of Saul. That now that everyone who hates is they're confederate. They've found friendship around the fact that they hate David. Just like Pilate and Herod became friends when Pilate sent Jesus to Herod. That they had a kinship now based on their abuse of the Savior. Together they whisper against me, everyone who hates me. Against me they plan evil concerning me. Notice how often that word evil has popped up. We had it there in verse 1. In an evil day the Lord will deliver him. So he knew the blessed man was going to have an evil day. And then in verse 5, we have the enemies have spoken evil against him. So there's an evil day that's going to come. There are enemies that are going to speak evil. And then in verse 7, they are planning evil. So he's got some trouble here, doesn't he? He is definitely in the valley of the shadow of death. Well, tomorrow we'll look at the end of this valley in 8 and 9 and take our step up into prayer in verse 10. So join me then here on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. For more fresh and delicious Bible studies, podcasts, books, and more, check out the Bible Bistro online and on YouTube. Join me again next time for Daily Dose Radio.